I want to tell you something about becoming a god. Everyone imagines it as an arrival, a threshold you cross, a door that opens and stays open. It isn't like that. It's more like subtraction. You don't gain something infinite. You lose something small, something so small you almost don't notice. Almost. His name was Guts. I want to start there, not with the eclipse, not with the Beherit, not with the years of stone and darkness and a body that had forgotten what movement felt like, with his name. Because names are the last thing that stay, and I need to know, before I go any further, whether his name still means anything to me. Guts. I'm saying it. I'm waiting. Let me tell you what happened. The eclipse was everything the God Hand promised. A ceremony of total consumption. The band of the hawk, my band, offered to something vast and inevitable in exchange for what I had always been meant to become. I won't describe what they looked like, not because it was too terrible, because it was too ordinary. People imagine the death of 100 soldiers as something cinematic. It isn't. It's just wet, just sound, just the specific way a human body communicates that it is no longer a human body. I watched all of it. Corcus, Judeau, Pippin, Rickart's face across the carnage, too far to reach, too young to understand. I watched all of it, and I felt something shifting inside me. Not guilt, not grief, something structural, like a building settling into new ground. This was the price. I had always known there would be a price. I had chosen not to look directly at what it was. That, I think, was my first mistake. Then Guts was there. He had fought his way through. Of course he had. That was always what Guts did. When the world said stop, he continued. When the wound said stop, he continued. When I said stop, he never stopped. Not once. Not for anyone. Not even for me. Especially not for me. He was bleeding from places that should have ended him, holding a sword that was more weight than weapon by then. Looking at me the way he always looked at me in the end, like he was trying to find something in my face that he was no longer certain was there. I remember thinking, 3 years, a dungeon that unmade me piece by piece. And he looked exactly the same. That familiar jaw, that particular fury that lived just below the surface of him, like heat beneath stone. Those eyes that had never once looked at me with anything less than complete honesty. Even now, even here, even watching me wear something that used to be his friend. Complete honesty. He wasn't begging, he was witnessing. There's a difference. I stood there in what I was becoming, and I looked at him, and I thought, say something, feel something, do something that means you are still the person who... I reached for it. That specific feeling. The one that had existed every time I looked at him for the entirety of the years we spent side by side. It had always been there before. Warm and complicated and difficult to name. Something between pride and hunger and fury and... I reached for it, and my hand closed around nothing. He's dead now. I need to say that plainly, because I keep circling it, and I think part of me believes that if I don't say it plainly, it might not be completely true yet. He's dead. I killed him. The mechanics of it don't matter. What matters is the sequence. I looked at him. I waited for the feeling. The feeling wasn't there. And in the absence of the feeling, I made a decision that should have been impossible and was instead very simple. That's the part I can't stop returning to. How simple it was. I have spent more mental effort deciding which road to take than I spent on that. He was just, and then he wasn't. And I waited for the grief to arrive, for the guilt, for the specific weight that should follow when you remove something permanent from the world. I waited. I am still waiting. There is a version of this where the nothingness is peace, where becoming a god means ascending past the small human agonies of attachment and loss, where the absence of grief is not an amputation but a liberation. I am trying to believe that version. I would like very much to believe that version. But here is the problem. I remember what the feeling felt like, not distantly, not as an abstraction. I remember the specific texture of it, the weight of it, the particular way it complicated every decision I ever made, from the moment he walked into my life looking for a fight and finding something he didn't expect. I remember that feeling the way you remember a room you grew up in. Every corner, every crack in the wall, the quality of light in the afternoon. I remember it completely, and it is gone. And those two things, perfect memory of the feeling and total absence of it, exist simultaneously inside me like two rooms separated by a wall that should not be there. I keep pressing on the wall. There's nothing on the other side. They're still dying around me. The eclipse continues. This is its nature. It does not pause for private crises. I watch it with the attention it deserves. The God hand requires presence. I am present. But underneath the presence, there is a process running that I cannot stop. I keep checking. The way you check a wound, not because you want to see it, because you need to know if it has changed. I think of his laugh, that specific laugh, rare enough that it meant something when it appeared, the way his whole face reorganized itself around it, the way it made the people around him feel briefly that the world was survivable. I think of it. I wait. Nothing. I think of the first time I saw him fight, the complete lack of technique, pure violence organized by instinct, the way I stood and watched and thought, what a waste, and then what a thing, and then something I didn't have words for yet. I wait. Nothing. I think of the years on the road, sleeping on the same ground, eating the same bad food, the particular companionship of people who have survived the same things together, how that creates a kind of shorthand, a language built from shared scars. He knew every scar I had before the dungeon. I knew every scar he had before the dungeon. We never talked about it. We didn't need to. I think of that. I wait. Nothing. 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 I need to be methodical about this. I'm going to account for everything that should be here and document what remains. Fear, gone, expected. Gods do not fear. Hunger, gone, expected. Gods do not need. Ambition, present, transformed, larger than it was and emptier at the center. Pride, present, functioning. The achievement is real. The dream is real. Falconia will exist. Humanity will be protected in the way I always intended. This part of me is intact. Contempt, present, unfortunately. I had hoped becoming something greater would also mean becoming something more patient with smallness. It hasn't. Love. I keep coming back to this inventory item. Love. For Casca, I check. There is something. Faint. Like the memory of warmth rather than warmth itself. A record of the emotion rather than the emotion. I file this and move on for the band, collective. What I check for is the particular grief of a commander who has lost soldiers who trusted him. There is nothing, not even the record of it. They are simply absent from the count. For guts. This is where the inventory fails, because what I had for guts was not a category I have a clean word for. It was too large for affection, too personal for loyalty, too furious for tenderness, too tender for fury. It was the feeling you have for the one person in the world who could make you doubt yourself. And I am a god now. Gods do not doubt. So perhaps the subtraction was necessary. Perhaps the transformation required specifically this removal, because specifically this was the thing that could have unmade the transformation. Perhaps killing him was not the price. Perhaps killing him was the mechanism. The Beherit didn't need the band, it needed him. I'm turning this over very carefully because if it's true, it means something I'm not prepared to consider. It means the Godhead knew. It means when I squeeze the Beherit in that dungeon, weeping and broken and beyond all rational thought, the thing that answered already understood that the dream would require the specific destruction of the specific person who made me capable of abandoning it. It means I was not ascending toward my destiny. I was being emptied of the only thing that could have made me choose differently. It means this nothingness isn't a side effect. It's the product. The eclipse is ending. The ceremony reaches its conclusion the way all ceremonies do, with a kind of professional finality. The mechanics complete themselves. The aperture closes. I stand in what I am, vast, cold, purposeful. And then something happens that I did not anticipate and cannot fully explain. In the last moment before the world reasserts itself, I see his sword, just the sword, lying where he fell, black iron, chipped and heavy and too large for any practical use, a ridiculous weapon. I always thought it was a ridiculous weapon. I told him so once. He told me to do something anatomically improbable. I laughed. I remember laughing. I look at the sword, and for one moment, not a feeling, not the feeling, but the ghost of its shape, the outline of where it used to live, like pressing your hand against cold glass and lifting it away and seeing for a moment the fog of your warmth before it disappears. One moment, then nothing. I am building a city. This is what gods do. They build, they order, they protect. Falconia rises exactly as I imagined it. Every stone in the right place, every wall where it needs to be, humanity gathered within it, safe from the darkness outside, exactly as I always intended. The dream is real. I walk through it sometimes and I look at the faces of the people who were alive because of what I chose. Children, families, ordinary people living ordinary lives inside the protection of something I built. This is what I sacrificed for. This is what he died for, whether he would have chosen it or not. The math is correct. I know the math is correct. And yet, I find myself returning to the same place, the same internal room, pressing on the same wall, checking. Are you there? Are you there? There is a particular quality to silence when you are waiting for an answer from something that no longer exists. It doesn't feel like silence. It feels like a held breath, like the world pausing before it tells you something you already know and cannot stop hoping is wrong. I am a god. I have built a city. I have fulfilled every ambition I carried for the entirety of my life. I have everything I reached for, and in the place where he used to be, not grief, not guilt, not even absence exactly, just a wall. And on the other side of the wall, silence. And in the silence, if I press hard enough, if I'm still enough, if I reach far enough back into the thing I was before I became what I am, sometimes I can almost hear it. That laugh. Rare, reluctant, real, almost.